Please, are you ready? Only if you're ready. Are you ready? Okay, we're ready here. Okay, good morning, everyone. Bonjour à tous. I'd like to begin by recognizing that we're gathered here today on unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. And the peoples of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The City of Ottawa honors the peoples and land of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. The City of Ottawa also honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples and their valuable past and present contributions to the land. And I would, at this point, on behalf of everyone here assembled, welcome members of council, their staff, and members of the public and the media. Thank you for joining us for this technical briefing. Today, we will discuss O Train Lines 2 and 4 trial running, which is the Trillium line, which will be a major milestone of the project, as it will demonstrate that the system is ready for a public launch. The trial running program is designed to demonstrate that the train systems, maintenance, and operations personnel are prepared to operate the system under real-life conditions. Many lessons learned from stage 1 have been included in this phase of the project, as we will hear today. Stage 2 LRT will transform the way we move in our city, and it's long overdue. The new extensions will connect more residents to more communities, further east, west, and in particular, the south. Today, we will focus on the lines that will provide better connections to our southern communities, and in particular, Carleton University, who has borne, I think, significant challenges as a result of the O train coming offline. We'll also serve the airport, Little Italy, and more. This light rail project also comes with new and improved connectivity enhancements and active transportation options that will make cycling, walking, and taking transit an integrated choice for our residents. And I know all of us are excited to launch this system and see it in operation and serving the people of Ottawa. And before we're able to do, we need to ensure that the system is, of course, safe and reliable. Our transit team will ensure that through this critical trial phase process. Staff today are prepared to provide an overview of the trial running. And with us today from Transit Services, we have Renée Amilcar, General Manager, Michael Morgan, the Director of Rail Construction. And they will be available at the conclusion of their presentation to answer questions. And after their presentation, I will open the floor first to members of council and then members of council staff. And once we've concluded that, we'll have a session for the media. So with that, I will turn it over to the team to walk us through their presentation.
I would like to give the floor now to Renée and Michael. They will proceed with the technical briefing. Thank you so much to the chair.
Over the last few months, we have achieved many significant milestones and made important progress towards this point, but there is still critical work to be done. Before we get into the details, I want to make one thing clear. We have taken a different approach to the opening of lines 2 and 4 than in the first stage of LRT. The public inquiry report provided a number of recommendations. Then I have challenged my team to work collaboratively with all stakeholders to ensure that every recommendation is applied and executed. We also undertook a number of reviews and lessons learned reports about Line 1. We have worked to ensure that every single best practice from these reports is put in place. The public inquiry outlined several themes that needed to be addressed as part of the transition to the operation of the Stage 2 LRT extensions. Those themes included building better, more collaborative relationship with council and contractors, a commitment to transparency, a commitment to safety, and a commitment to service delivery. These themes have been applied to the Stage 2 project to date. They continue to be applied as we approach this next phase of trial running. We are ensuring that all operations meet the highest safety, and service standards. We're being clear about how we will share information and transparent about the status of the project. And we are working collaboratively with all stakeholders. Throughout the course of today's presentation, you will hear the difference in our approach to getting this system ready for the public. Another action we began at the start of the Stage 2 project was prioritizing safety by engaging an independent safety auditor for all 3 extensions. This step ensures that we have expert oversight right from the design phase, guiding us through the safety certification processes. Let me share a few more specific examples of how we are applying lessons learned from Stage 1. We have been running 9 trains through the testing phase to mirror passenger service and crew reliability before trial running. We will be introducing a parallel bus service to help customers adjust to the new rail service once it launches. We are also focusing on pre-trial running activities aimed at system reliability growth. These activities allow us to identify and address any potential safety issues before we commence full operations, ensuring a safer experience for everyone. We want to respect the terms of the project agreement as well as the expectations of councillors and transit customers. We will not open the system unless we are confident that it will succeed and that we have completed thorough system testing and training. We continue to make progress and are preparing for trial running. Once trial running begins, we will be monitoring the system's performance, gathering information, and making necessary adjustments. Throughout trial running, we want to ensure that the system is safe and reliable when it opens. This is an essential step in our commitment to providing a transit system that the public can trust. The dates for trial running are not confirmed yet. We're here today to share details of the trial running process, including updates on remaining works, testing and commissioning, and how daily testing results will be communicated to council, media, and the public. Now, I would like to turn this presentation over to Michael. You know Michael very well, and he will walk us through to the details. Please.
Merci Renée, je suis vraiment content d'être ici aujourd'hui.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy today to provide you an update on what's going on.
I'm going to take my time. Some of it, I've tried to introduce some photos to keep it a little bit lighter, but there's some heavy stuff in here, and so I will try to go slowly. If I see kind of glazed looks, I'll slow down and speed up, but there's time for questions at the end. Happy to answer all the questions you may have about the project, about trial running, about where we are with testing, training, the whole bit. So with that, we'll get started. So just the first photo, obviously Rideau River pedestrian bridge, very excited to get the bridge open, but I use this as an example of, something that does include some deferred works. And so later in the program, I will talk to you about deferred works. And so you don't notice it unless I point it out, but underneath the abutments of the bridge, there's a special stone facing that is required to be applied, which to meet the aesthetic requirements of Heritage Canada National Capital Commission. So that's an example of something that doesn't affect the operation of the bridge, but it's something that we've told the contractor, take your time, you can do that later. We've opened the bridge and so we can continue. So
Michael, we're not getting the slides online here. I'm not sure if they're just not cycling through, but we're not seeing them.
We'll pause for a second to make sure that the councillors online can see the slides. Councillor Bernard is in that photo. If you could look very closely, so he was there. So maybe we can skip to the next slide while we get the YouTube or the Zoom thing going. But
it was a great opening. Perfect.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay, very good. So we'll go to the next photo. Obviously, the airports. Go back one. We'll go back to the airport station. So the airport station, the airport's been a very good partner for us on this project. Obviously, they built the concourse area that connects to the LRT station. So that was I would say, a huge success. They were ready to go. They've been great. You see there the photos of the ticket vending machines and the fare gates. So fare gates, common solution across all of the LRT stations, now in place, working, ready to go. Obviously, there's some, the day before we turn it on, there's some final adjustments we make, but otherwise we're in very good shape with the airport and the trains. If you're at the airport, you will see the trains coming and going every day. If we go to the next slide, just a quick look at Leitrim Station. So it just gives you a sense of where we are in terms of the finished product. You get a sense of the train, you get a sense of the early landscaping at the stations. We haven't completed the flip yet, but we are planning in the next week or so to move. Right now, the bus stop is out of the picture. We're planning on putting the new bus loop into service in the next week or so. And so the buses will then use that new facility. There's a bus operator building on the right-hand side, which has occupancy. Our operations staff will work out of there. This station actually just received occupancy yesterday, so we're very excited. The elevators at the station are ready to go. Basically, you're looking at nearly a finished product there. There's still part of the park and ride that we need to finish, but there's enough of a parking lot there that it could be usable. And so that would be another example of something we might defer. But you look at that facility, it's a great facility, a great outcome. We're very pleased with the design and the solution there. If we go to the next slide, just a quick look at Corso Italia. So this station's been in a very good state for a while. On the left-hand side, you see a bit of an emergency walkway. That's just an emergency walkway path if we need to do evacuations, but otherwise the landscaping is still kind of being finalized. There's one last pedestrian crossing to be put across Gladstone. We're planning to do that before we open for service, obviously to make that station as accessible as possible. But again, in very good shape. The artwork is at this location. We will activate it very soon. And when we open, it's a very nice piece of artwork at this location. So that's the lighter part of the presentation. So we'll go into the handover piece. And so what we want to talk to you about today is what is trial running? What are the entry requirements to start trial running? We don't want to start trial running prematurely. We've got very good alignment with the contractor on the prerequisites. Talk a little bit about where we are in process. Kind of trial running prerequisites leads to what does the testing commissioning look like? What's the status of stations? What are all those inputs? Give you a sense of that. Give you a sense of where we are with running and training, and then give you an update on here's what trial running looks like. Here's how we'll communicate it to you, and here's what we need to do before we open. So we go to the next slide. So long list here, 9 items that are embedded. These are straight, slightly modified, cleaner version, but this is straight from the contract. So these are the 9 requirements that we've had in the contract since day one, in which we've clarified the interpretation, and there's no kind of dispute there with the contractor on what it takes. So the first one is that the integrated system has been tested. We're done testing commissioning. We need to be done testing commissioning. We also need to have all the reports and all the submittals provided in a way that's clean. It's one thing to have a report submitted. It's another to review that report, to see if there's deficiencies, to clean up those deficiencies and do a resubmittal. So we're in that process now. We're down to kind of the final strokes of the last tests. And we are into making sure the process of making sure we're 100% on all these reports and they're clean. Second, the complete fleet is fully tested and ready for passenger service. So if you recall, we had 6 Alstom Lint vehicles to begin with. And so those were put into service in 2015. We still have those vehicles. They underwent a rehabilitation program. We added the new Siemens train control system to them. We swapped out the radio with a new P25 emergency radio. So those ones are good and they've been ready for a while. And then the other 7 Stadler vehicles were fully manufactured at the facility, the headquarters in Switzerland, and delivered to site. So we received them in plenty of time. So that was another success story for the project. But there's no outstanding modification program. It's not like the vehicles are still going through final assembly. We're still putting on the final bolts and brackets. Like they've been done for a while. And so we're really just focused on reliability of the systems. Number 3, the complete signal and train control system fully test ready for service. I'll talk about a couple of things that are still open that we're still working on, but we're in pretty good shape there. The other one, item 4, no outstanding defects affecting rail systems, track, signal, comms. When we drafted the project agreement in 2017 through 2019, it was really important for us to say, when we go into service, it needs to be clean. The stations need to be finished. We need to be ready to go. So we're good there. The next one, again, talking about the major defects, safety defects, or incomplete vehicle modification program. This is just, we can't have the maintainer working on a backlog of issues once we go into service. The contractors, capital construction contractors are eager to go home. They want to finish and go home. They want to get handed off to the maintainer. We can't leave the maintainer with a pile of work to be done. And so there's a big focus there to make sure that the maintainer, they could just focus on maintenance, on service, and not have to worry about defects and rectification modification programs. Stations are substantially complete. We'll talk about that in a couple of slides. TNext is fully mobilized, fully trained, ready to commence. So the maintainers there, ready to go, ready to maintain the stations, maintain the elevators, maintain the trains. TNext has submitted the maintenance verification validation matrix, which is a very complex way of saying they have all their documents and procedures in place and the training has been completed. And then the last one, city is fully mobilized, trained, ready to operate the system. So that's having our operators, our controllers. Big change in the current system is that we brought the control system for the Trillium Line in-house. That used to be outsourced. So we brought that in-house, built in new SCADA systems, new tunnel ventilation, new train control. So that's all operated by city staff out of our multimodal control center. So direct access to bus operations, direct access to the special constables unit, all in kind of one room to provide an integrated transit service. So that's a big change, but also I think a big improvement in terms of how we'll be able to manage and operate the service. So go to the next slide. Talk a little bit about, so that's the things that we need to start trial running and really to go into service. There is a list of things that kind of defects that we know and outstanding work that is not going to be done in time for trial running. There's a couple of intersections that still need traffic signalization to be activated. Those are absolutely required for service, but they're not required for trial running. So there's a couple of locations there. And then, I included some examples of some other things that we're trying to, again, be collaborative with the contractor and say, these don't need to be ready right at the start. Obviously, they're pushing to finish those as quickly as possible, but there are some things, the example I gave earlier was the final stone facing on the underside of the bridge, final landscaping, there's a turnout that needs to be replaced. So there are some things that we are tracking that will come a little bit later. They are still trying to get that all done this year. But in terms of substantial completion, in terms of trial running, they will be considered a minor deficiency. So I go to the next slide, just to spend a minute or two on what is testing and commissioning, because we use the term kind of very broadly, very generically all the time, and just we take for granted that everybody understands what that means. And these linear infrastructure projects are very complex because it is a guideway that we need to build. It is 13 buildings that we need to build. It's a maintenance facility we need to build. So there's a lot of building structures, a lot of utilities that get in the way. So building it is its own challenge, but it also has a number of systems that need to be tested. Obviously, the first one, bringing it all together as kind of an integrated solution, the train control system to ensure safety for the trains. Another change and improvement we made over the last system, adding in a more advanced train control system, the first of its kind on a federally regulated system. Fire life safety systems. We upgraded the tunnel ventilation systems in the tunnel, new fire safety systems at all the stations. All of those things, they all need to be tested. All of the vehicle systems, there was a series of regulatory changes that came out over the last few years in terms of what needs to be on the vehicle, how do you monitor movements of the vehicles. We need to be compliant with Transport Canada regulatory matters, and then just integrated with the rest of the system. So there's a lot of work there. All the communication systems, these are all things we didn't have in the 2015 service. We didn't have a whole series. We probably have 1,000 cameras on the system. We have several hundred emergency telephones. We have, a dedicated control system, all new things that all need to be tested and verified. Station operations, very good shape there. But again, just kind of a list of features. And then the last one, the maintenance facilities. If you recall, the Trillium Line was maintained out of a 1960s freight building at Walkley Yard. We've since built a custom purpose-built facility, including all the latest features, an automatic car wash, a wheel lathe, crane systems, all of the things that you need to maintain a modern fleet. So those are all in place now. So the next slide we'll talk about, so where are we in testing and commissioning? we're really in the final stages of running trains, verifying performance, getting ready to go. There are a couple, say there's 3 challenges there in terms of the train control system. We are seeing some challenges with the data integration to make the countdown messages on the platform work, so not a safety issue, but certainly a customer service feature that we want to be working correctly. There is a schedule. So we are, operations, to their credit, they've come up with some innovative ways of running the train system and we need to update the schedule to match that. So some things that I think will pay dividends in terms of reliability in the future. So very good changes, but we do need to do some work on that. And then Transit Next is providing a performance reporting system, and there's some data integration issues between that system and the train control system. Fire life safety, we're in very good shape. Ottawa Fire Services has been up and down the guideway, checking all the telephones, and the fire telephones are ready to go there. Vehicle systems, we're just in the process of tracking the reliability. So the vehicles are complete, but we're just in the mode of monitoring the performance. Communication systems, largely cleanup of the reports. There's a handful of devices that are offline, but they'll come online over the next few days. Station operations, so we have all of the TSSA approvals for all of the elevators on the system. So the elevators are all approved, so that's good. That's obviously a third-party approval outside of our control, so it's good to have control over that. And then just last night, I understand another building occupancy permit came through, so we now have 8 out of the 13 building occupancy permits. We need all 13 to start trial running. That is absolutely a key for us. We need the majority of the things on this list to be done to start trial running. And then the maintenance facilities, some final cleanup and test reports that are being done there. So in very good shape. So in terms of kind of overall issues, it's really monitoring the performance, closing out some final things with train control, wrapping up some final documentation and the building occupancy permits. So the next slide, to just kind of reinforce what I just said, which is that the approvals for the elevators are now in place. There are no escalators on this system, so no concerns there. Occupancy permits are in place for the maintenance storage facility, the 2 bus operator buildings. There's 7 stations that are listed there. And then Leitrim is the additional station that came in yesterday. So we are working closely with Building Code Services to make sure we have all those approvals in place. We can't put we can't put the public into the stations without that. In terms of the training, good progress. We're not done. There's a little bit more work to be done, but we are in a place where we have enough operators and controllers to be able to operate trial running. So as we wrap up the final tests and reports over the coming weeks, we will kind of finish up some additional training. Maintenance team is ready to go. Emergency responders, they've done a series of activities and tests and exercises out on the system, including an evacuation last year with a full smoke and maquillage show evacuating a train on the airport elevated guideway. So that was a very impressive activity that was done by the team. So on slide 5, we talk a little bit about, and we'll get into even more technical details in terms of how we manage the system. But I just want to, this is really meant to give you some additional background. What have we been doing with the system? How are we using the operations system to build confidence that we're going to be ready to go when we open? And then I'll just give you some highlights of where we are with some of the technical issues. So on the next slide, one of the things I talked to Light Rail Subcommittee about and Transit Commission last in May, at the end of May, was the idea that we need to run the trains to match the full service level. And so we essentially got there on or about July 8th. It does a few things when you force the system onto the full schedule. I mean, one, it restricts the number of maintenance hours you have on the overnight period to maintain the trains. So the maintainer needs to demonstrate that they can consistently and reliably get the fleet into the maintenance shop overnight, do the inspections, do the refueling, do the sanding, cleaning, all of those things, and have the fleet turned around for the morning. So when you're only running, test trains for 10 hours a day, they have all the time in the world to do that. When you're on a 18-hour schedule, including an hour for launch and an hour for reduction, suddenly they only have 4 hours to do that. And so they need to demonstrate that they can do that work during the 4 hours. Equally, the operations team need to be on shift and demonstrate that they can cycle through the shifts and that they can run the system. And then throughout that period, we're constantly monitoring for reliability issues, for anything that can come up that could cause us any concern in terms of when we open to the public. Ideally, I think for us, we are in this window of wanting to run that system in a final configuration for 8 to 10 weeks before opening to the public. Now that wraps in trial running, that wraps in substantial completion, but it's that 8 to 10 weeks that gives us the confidence that we've actually demonstrated the service to a level we're happy with. The other thing on the next slide that gives us some comfort is the fact that starting in January, we have, January wasn't up to the 9 trains, but you see quickly in February, we got to 9 trains running every day. And that's running the peak service is important in terms of just demonstrating how the system operates, making sure that the fleet can become available. That was certainly one of the challenges on past projects, is not running the full fleet or the peak service for an extended period of time. In this case, we've basically run for the majority of this year at that peak service. So that gives us comfort. But that's only kind of one lens. The second lens is to, as I just mentioned on the prior slide, if you go to the next slide, please, is to run to the service schedule. And so earlier in the year, we weren't running the full 18 hours a day. And so just recently, we've since converted to the 18 hours a day to really kind of demonstrate that we can meet that service schedule. The orange line on this graph is the planned schedule hours. The little dip is for the Saturday, Sunday, but then you see the 18 hours a day during the week. You can kind of see where we were at the beginning of the year and where we are now. This reflects a buildup of number of operators who are trained, availability of controllers, availability of maintainers, and a reduction in the amount of construction work that's happening on the system. So we slowly build up. So just recently we got to the point where we're running that full schedule. Now we want to run that full schedule for 8 to 10 weeks and make sure nothing new arises during that period. We are also tracking all of the reliability issues to make sure that we're, getting to a point where the system will be reliable once it does open. Critically, like it did in 2015, the system relies on single track with passing sidings. And so the switches and the switch performance on the system are critical to making sure there are no delays. So we are still seeing a couple per week. We had a bit of a bump there, but we made some changes. We're close, but we really want to get that number to between 0 and 0. How about that? You normally get a switch failure like once every month or once every 3 months. Once or a couple of weeks is too many for us, and so we are trying to drive that down. On the system infrastructure, some ups and downs as we start to run the full 18 hours. You see kind of a bit of an uptick, but we have been able to identify some key issues that we can address, and the team is actively tackling those now. We're hoping to kind of resolve the majority of those before we go into service. There's a kind of a couple issues that I reported previously. There was one in train control issue early February that was resolved. We have an end of the line kind of bug that we're working through right now. So we are finding, some small things, and we're trying to react quickly to resolve them quickly. The more things we can find during this period, the better. That just means that we can eliminate those issues and they won't occur during service. The next slide, just to talk a little bit about the vehicles. The vehicles are getting there. There are a couple of challenges in terms of like the braking applications and some integration with the signal system. But the challenge with this slide is it doesn't really show the impact. So for example, this is just a dump of all the data. So if we're having 50, you may get, say, 20 events during a day, but some of them are resets, some of them are just kind of innocuous alarm messages. Now that we're running the full service schedule, we can start measuring, the impact of these to see if there's actually causing delays, because the count may be high, but it's really about delays to performance that we care about. And so starting next week, we'll be in a much better position to start tracking and measuring the impacts of those issues. And they should slowly resolve themselves as the maintainer gets to them. So that's kind of where we are with testing, with training, with reliability. So there's a number of things that we need to do. We're not ready to start trial running today. We will send a memo to council when we're starting. And so this next section, I just want to talk about trial running. What does it look like? So 21-day period. If you recall, previously we'd used a 12-day period. The 12-day period was 9 days of performance and 3 days of emergency exercises. In the updated model that we're using on our projects, it's 14 days to measure the performance and 7 days for the emergency exercises. And within the 14 days, it's really about achieving an average of 98.5% of on-time performance for the trains. Once we're at that point, it basically means the system is seamless, smooth, we're not catching any issues. The big focus will be to run the system for the 18 hours a day. The following morning, there'll be a debrief with the technical teams, including the independent certifier, the systems integration verifier, to check yesterday's results. Once we have yesterday's results, we will then publish them, share them with council so that council is absolutely clear on where we are with the performance of the system. So it's really that item A, which is critical for us. Item B is the maintainer responding? Are they there? Are they active in ensuring that the service reliability standard is being achieved? So a big change from the past in terms of having that hard-coded number in the project agreement in full alignment with the contractor on where we are. And the contractor has been very good, totally aligned with us on the idea that we should not start trial running until we're ready. And on past projects, there's been this idea that, you know, from capital construction teams, you start as soon as you can so you can finish as soon as you can. In this case, there's full alignment on we should only start when we're ready and no sooner. So that's a very good place to be with the contractor. The next slide, just carve out some, this is where I get into a little bit of the kind of more commercial areas. Holistically, trial running is meant to demonstrate that the entire system is ready to go, that between the operations team, the maintenance team, and the infrastructure, we can offer a reliable service. Equally, it is a contractual requirement for our contractor. And the contractor will be measured during that period, but the contractor is allowed to ask for relief for certain events. Practically, I'll give you an example. Michael Morgan is riding the train. He sees hears something he doesn't like. He says, "Stop everything, pause." I get off. I go and look at something, and I say, "Oh, my mistake. It's nothing. Keep going." If I actively interfere with trial running or cause them to stop for an hour during a day, the following day, if it turned out to be nothing, then they will get relief on that. So that would be a non-project co-cause. Something that the city does, something that a third party does, they will absolutely get relief for that number, and we will credit them the difference. And so in a given day, their target is 98.5. But if I interfered with the operation and caused that number to drop to 96, the following day, there would be a process where they would essentially be given credit for that 2%. And so, you know, it's meant to really kind of keep them clean on what they need to deliver, what they're responsible for. It gives them kind of credit or relief for anything that's caused by a third party, such as the city. You know, if there's a strike or a power outage, any of those things, that's really kind of an opportunity for them to ensure that they're kept whole on the calculation. Now, if it's something that's repetitive on the city side, there is a scenario where they could pass trial running. But the city would still say, well, there's something on the city side that we need additional time to work on. And so if it could be an operational issue, it could be a control issue, it could be a staffing issue, we might say, yes, the contractor, you've passed, but on our side, we're going to take the decision to run longer to kind of work out the bugs and whatever issue it is. Maybe it's a training issue and an operational issue. So there's two pieces there. Ideally, it's just we do it, we run trial running, there's no issues. Holistically, we achieve the 98.5 and we're ready to go. But equally, there is a scenario where, you know, we give them some relief for issues that are outside of their control. That's kind of a contractual lens that we apply to the trial running process. Go to item 6. So during the trial running period, Transit Next has a maintenance management performance reporting system called EMPERS. On a daily basis, they need to push out a report that basically shows the calculation, how they come up with the 98.5%. That's done jointly with the city and the independent certifier and the systems integration verifier to make sure the numbers are done correctly. That system is ready for reporting on normal situations. There is some final integration work to be done for them to generate those reports for failure modes or emergency scenarios or kind of single tracking issues. So we're still working on their plan B for how they would calculate that. They have some challenges there, but that's something that we can work through. They have a plan B, it's a bit onerous. Eventually they plan to automate the methodology for calculating the performance into their system. But for today, we're ready for what we need for trial running. So we're in good shape there, though there's still some work to be done by them on that solution. Page 6, so we just want to remind everyone that we are going to send out a daily memo Monday to Friday, not Saturday, Sunday, Monday to Friday, showing the results of trial running, just to be absolutely kind of clear where we are in process. We don't want to start, you know, if we have some bad days, we just want to tell you we had some bad days. We'll give you the reasons. If we have good days, we want you to know that we're having good days. So we want to be very clear about that. And so we have you know, the next slide, I won't get there yet, but we show you a memo of what we are proposing to share or plan to share. We will have Ricardo Rail, so a very large international consulting firm who is our systems integration verifier, who will be providing a third-party assessment of those calculations. And then at the end, once we're completed trial running, we'll get an assessment from Ricardo Rail, and we'll come back to Light Rail Subcommittee to provide kind of a debrief and answer any questions at that time about how it went and what we learned and what we need to improve on and what the next steps are. So slide 6 gives you just a very kind of simple, you know, well, gives you a copy of the memo that we're planning to send to council during the weekdays. Obviously, it will be in French and English. This, I understand, only the English version is in the deck, but we'll give you a French and English version of that. What day is it? What day of trial running is it? What's the running score? Are there any issues? Has the service reliability been met? You know, we're just trying to keep it simple. We're not trying to inundate you with too many details, but we will tell you the results, and we will tell you what the problems are. So we want to provide that every day so that there's absolute certainty. So at the end, when we come to you with a recommendation on timelines to open, you're fully armed, or Light Rail Subcommittee is fully armed and equipped with the information they need to make a decision. So trial running, once it's done, it doesn't finish the contract. The contractor doesn't achieve substantial completion just with trial running. There are some additional steps that need to be done. So we'll receive the system integration verifier's report on trial running. Transit Next will have to complete their final safety case. So trial running is an input to their safety case and the safety certification process. So there will be a little bit of time, talking days here, for them to do that activity. That safety case will be reviewed by our independent safety auditor, Centre. So again, Centre, an international consulting firm working in the rail sector. They've been with us since the start of the project, and so they will be taking a look at that. And then the next step is substantial completion. With those things done, we will be at a point where we'll ask TNX will submit a notice, and we expect the independent certifier to review their notice to see if they've met the conditions for substantial completion. Once they've met substantial completion, we will start paying them their maintenance payments. Once the maintenance payments are rolling, we will then go to the Canadian Transportation Agency, ask for a new certificate of fitness to be able to operate the system, and we will submit a change of notice in rail operations to Transport Canada and ask for an updated railway operating certificate to allow us to open. So we've been working with the CTA for about 7 years now on this project, and the same with Transport Canada. So they've been along with us the entire way, but that would be essentially give us the regulatory approvals as well as the contractual approvals to allow the public onto the system. From there, it's really just a decision point to say, you know, when would we open? How would we open? What gives us confidence that we could open? And so we've been looking at it through these 3 bullet points as the lens of what gives us comfort and confidence that we can run, that we can open to the public. And really, it's the first that we've been running since January through July with 9 trains in service, that we've been running that peak service. The next is that we've been in the final service configuration for a period of at least 8 to 10 weeks. And then the third is that there are no new or emergent safety reliability issues that occur during the 8 to 10 weeks that would give us pause. You know, we really need to be at a point where when we open to the public, everything's resolved, everything's in hand, there's no long list of mitigations, we're comfortable with opening, and we're comfortable that we can put the system into service. Assuming all those elements have been achieved, we will be in a position to advise on an opening date to the Light Rail Subcommittee. And then just finally, in terms of communications, starting today with the technical briefing, we are planning on providing council with some additional information, including a media kit, a dedicated webpage, the daily memo, which will come out to council, as well as some additional tools that our team is planning to provide. So that's the detailed summary of the trial running process and the handover process. I'll hand it back to Renée to talk about next steps.
Merci, Michael. C'est excitant, ça s'en vient, ça s'en vient. We are getting closer to completing the necessary steps before we begin the trial running phase. As Michael mentioned, the number of station occupancy permits continues to grow. Progress on finishing works at stations and in the guideway is good, and testing of the system is seeing improvements each day. As we close out the prerequisite for trial running and grow reliability of the system, we get closer to starting trial running. We will advise you through a memo of the specific start date of trial running. To our trial running activities, we are working diligently to ensure that we are ready for all possible scenarios. This phase is crucial as it allows us to identify and mitigate any issues before launch. Even with all these precautions and planning, we know that there will be challenges that we need to prepare for. We know that the previous Trillium line ran well for many years, and we want the new line to be able to ultimately replicate that performance. We have made improvements to help the resiliency of the line, for instance, by removing the crossing of the via tracks and double platforms at the end of the line. However, much of the system still includes single track sections with passing tracks. This means the performance of the system will rely heavily on the reliability of the switches at the single track segments and the reliability of the trains. It is important to confirm these elements before we start service. This performance will be confirmed for the trial running period. When trial running is complete, we begin taking steps towards substantial completion. This is achieved once all the infrastructure elements have been completed, including regulatory approvals, safety and security certifications, and the successful completion of trial running. Substantial completion is a critical step that we cannot neglect. We need to ensure that there is adequate time to ensure all the required requirements are met successfully. An independent certifier will then certify that the contract requirements outlined in the project agreement have been met. The independent certifier is a third party that will work with the city and Transit Next to ensure all requirements are met and any deficiencies are captured. Next slide, please. Once all of the contractual completion requirements, safety approvals, and regulatory approvals are achieved, the City of Ottawa will be in a position to open Line 2 and Line 4 for service. It is at that point, we will provide the opening date at the Light Rail Subcommittee. Today, we cannot provide a date for completing the process that Michael and I outlined in this presentation. We need to ensure that our focus remains on the successful achievement of each remaining milestones, rather than attempting to meet a forecast date. This too is a lesson learned from the earlier stage of LRT. By focusing on successfully meeting these milestones, we will achieve our primary goal to provide transit customers with a system that they can be confident to ride each day. While we have focused on the remaining requirements to open Lines 2 and 4, I also want to say a little about how the rest of the transit system will adjust once the opening occurs. When Line 2 and 4 opens to customers, parallel bus service will be offered for a period of time to allow for smooth transition, ensuring customers can adjust to the new routes and schedules. The launch of the new Ways to Bus network is planned to follow shortly after the opening of train Lines 2 and 4, connecting that part of the city by rail and opening up new convenient connections across the city. Residents and customers will be kept informed in advance of any changes to service. Today, we have shared details of the trial running process, including remaining works required, testing and commissioning progress, and how we will communicate daily testing results to Council. This is an exciting time for Cité Transport as we get ready to expand our service to more communities in our city. Our focus is now on ensuring the safety and reliability of the system. We are now open to questions.
Thank you very much to the team. We'll now go to councillors' questions. I'm going to go this time in reverse order of ward. Start with Ward 24. If the councillor for Ward 24 is here or online, it's Councillor Lowe.
He's not here.
Okay, 23. Okay, 22. 22 is me, and I'm going to ask like just a question on. Sounds like obviously it's a very comprehensive program, and some might say, well, we're going to be summer ready. How do we know we'll be winter ready for the system? Because this turnover testing is happening during the summer months, which sees its own share of variable weather. But how do we know through this that we'll be winter ready?
So we did have a good opportunity to test the trains this year to verify that all the track infrastructure, all the switches were in place. We're able to run kind of end to end on the line this year and verify that the switch heaters in place were working. We have made some changes to ensure that they're working perfectly. We saw they were running a little bit too much, so we're a little over ambitious in running those switch heaters, and so we found a way to dial them back. And then separately, the trains, certainly the first 6 trains, we ran them in winter for a number of years, and so we're quite comfortable with them. The Stadler trains, they arrived about 3 years ago, so we've been running them through the winter period without any major issues. So at this point, certainly there's effort that the maintainer will need to do to ensure that they're fully equipped and ready to go, but we've had a lot of experience with winter and these vehicles so far.
And I think we learned from the first experience that we would be going back to Transit Commission with a briefing on how the system is going to be winter ready. So can we expect that we would have a briefing perhaps at the Transit Commission, that we would go over how the system will be winter ready?
Sure, this is something that we can do, absolutely, Chair.
Thank you. That's all for me. Ward 21. Ward 20. Ward 19. Ward 18. 18?
Yeah, sure.
The microphone's coming to you right now.
What?
You got the mic.
Okay, one question?
Yeah, sure.
No.
Yeah, you can. I did 2 questions, so you can.
Okay, so because we're going to get to 16 soon.
We'll
and
get to people's
He's
questions,
got 24, so I just want to make sure that we are consistent. Do we like 3 each, maybe?
Sure.
Okay. Okay.
If you don't have, if it's not answered, we'll come back to you. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So I have a question. It was great to see all the different components that have been tested and hear all about that. One thing that I didn't hear any discussion about is, has there been any testing on station layout? And that was something I can tell you as a person that who was there on the first day that we got to Herdman, and the design of the station did not work because we came out and where we were supposed to walk was where all the bus stops were. So it filled up, we were all walking in the road. So then you had to make amendments and build the sidewalk back. I would wait downtown and there would be people lined up on the stairs because the platforms weren't big enough. And I didn't hear any discussion at all about how those considerations have been looked at in terms of volume, station layout. And there's also accessibility considerations to be concerned that we're not, have to be considered as well.
So we've been working Pat Scrimger, I believe, is here, who may be able to kind of provide some input as well. But we certainly from day one, a number of the stations replicate the existing kind of configuration that was kind of proven over 20 years. And so that, that was in place. We also, work closely with our partners in service planning. There was accessibility consultants involved throughout to make sure that we're looking at that all the time. The stations are sized to the expected ridership on the line. And so there's a piece there that we'll need to monitor closely. So there's been a lot that's gone into it. Certainly all the lessons from Herdman and the bus loops and the integration of bus loops have been fed into the major areas, Leitrim, Bowesville, Limebank. So obviously with all the lessons learned from stage 1. I don't know, Pat, is there anything you want to add to that?
Thanks, Michael. I think the only other thing is that
before we open to customers, we will be doing what we call a dress rehearsal, where we bring a lot of invited people in and try to stress the different elements, put hundreds of people in, where up till now it's just been the builders and the verifiers working through. We'll do that in the short number of days before we open.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think that was probably something unexpected, those challenges in the first few days. In one of the very first slides that was shown, it talked a lot about the lessons that had been learned from phase one and the report that came out. And one of the items that I noticed was that, making sure that everything was at substantial completion. And if I remember correctly, those sort of issue logs or logging of those issues didn't become public on all of the open issues until the reports were released as part of the inquiry. Will council members have access to that information before the launch?
So there were a series of mitigations that were in place. At this point, we don't have a long list of mitigations. The list of deferred works and open items is what I've shown you today. We're absolutely going to show you any issues that arise during trial running. And at the next briefing, we can absolutely provide an update on here's the open works, here's the remaining works, here's any kind of special considerations we've applied. But as much as possible, we're trying to avoid having any special operational maneuvers or special operational treatments. Right now, this plan B for having to calculate the performance reports during service, that's kind of like our first one that we're trying to get fixed before we go into service. But otherwise, absolutely, we can provide that all ahead of time. Okay,
thank you. And then I'll make my third one. The question, when there was a shutdown, I think it was last summer, there's a lot of questions about, how are we going to compensate riders? And the answer was always, we'll look at that when line 2, line 4 opens. Is there any thought to a free period or anything as a result of those discussions that we had last year?
Thank you for the question. Yes, we'll come with some recommendations when we will be ready to open the system. So for now, we are still thinking about a scenario, but we will come back. This is something that we have on our radar.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. We can come back to you if you have other questions at the end. DSET.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Thanks for the presentation to staff. I'm doing the math in my head here and just seeing the presentation, and I'm always seized with Carleton issues just because there's so many students that are trying to get to and from campus, and of course they've had the line shut down for some time now, and it's such a critical piece of infrastructure for that campus. I was there on campus when the first O train opened, and it was great, but I think people are missing that connection now. And every time I talk to either the president or other staff at Carleton, they're constantly raising this with me. So just on the timeline, what can I tell Carleton students and staff about timeline for the fall? It looks like we had initially said we'd be ready for early September, I think was our absolute deadline. It looks like that's being pushed back a bit now. And so what is it that I can communicate to them around timeline for having something up and running for those students that are critical to get access there and all through the South End?
Thank you for the question. The reason why we don't want to provide any dates, we don't want to work under pressure and unfortunately give up our good work that we have done so far. But we have this concern. We know that that could be so helpful for Carleton students, but we will continue to work on our scenario that we just presented. Hopefully, if everything's go well, we just showed a scenario where we need 8 to 10 weeks, and we are, I would say, at the beginning of those 8 to 10 weeks. Hopefully, if everything's okay, after 10 weeks, we should be able to have a good news to announce. But today, I won't provide any date for this reason.
Yeah, and I understand we can't provide dates, and I get that portion of both operational and strategy. But there's certainly some rough timelines I think would be helpful. We did provide a rough timeline previously, and it looks like we're going to miss that rough timeline, and that's why I was asking. So yeah, it'd be helpful for me anyway in those conversations to make sure that students, parents, academic staff, and administration at Carleton are fully aware of this. The new pedestrian bridge is great. I want to thank staff for getting that open, and really happy to have participated in its the unveiling with Councillor Brockington and other councillors that were there. One other follow-up question, just around the trial running period and then afterwards. So are we experiencing any concerns or issues now that could affect trial running? I guess we're into testing and commissioning at the moment. Is there anything in there that is a concern for staff that should be brought to councillors' attention prior to us getting into trial running? What are we looking for if there is anything that's been come up in the initial testing phase?
Thank you for the question. I think that the 3 slides that I showed on the reliability issues, like we are looking for week over week to have no switch issues. We are looking for a slight improvement in the vehicle reliability and some integration with the signal system. So there's a couple of points that we noted in the slides just in respect to reliability that we still want to clean up before we start trial running. So I would say those are the flags at this point. If there's anything else that comes up, we should know in the coming week or so. If there's any kind of new issues that arise, we are planning to load a new schedule and do some adjustments over the weekend. So next week, if anything new arises, we could advise, but right now it's about switch performance, vehicle, and signal system reliability. We need to clean those up a little bit before we start.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Cartier says.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to thank staff first for a very detailed outline of the remaining steps. Your presentations are always good, but today you went into some significant detail, and I thank you for that. I just want to clarify the 8 to 10 weeks cover training, testing, and trial running. Those are the top 3 matters that make up the 8 to 10 weeks. And so if we have top performance for all of those categories, that take us into October, and at that point you will probably be ready to open. Is that a fair timeline?
Thank you for the question. So the 8 to 10 weeks, we are there now, and that includes the certification as well. So that means during that period, we could be able to open the system if everything's okay.
Okay, very good. There are many secondary issues outstanding in my ward that don't impact when the line opens. That's been difficult to get some status updates on. I'll just list them and then maybe staff can come back. But I just want to reiterate that the challenge for me as a local councillor in replying to public inquiries is not to have really any firm information on when outstanding matters are going to be taken care of. So the quality of Hunt Club Road, for example, the city has been attempting to pave Hunt Club under the O train line going east for 3 years now. It's in terrible shape. At the last meeting, I was told it would be deferred to autumn, and then 2 days later, the public are being told it's next year. The Sawmill Creek multi-use pathway that connects with South Key Station, finally, with much work from my office, got it reopened, but it's not accessible for people who live nearby in wheelchairs. That remains outstanding. The Walkley Road MUP that has been closed for years. There are no timelines on it reopening. Many people use this as a shortcut. Again, trying to work with staff to get information on this has been challenging. At Walkley Station, I believe Walkley Station is the closest station to residential along the entire Trillium line. And we have ongoing issues with the decibels from the arriving and departing trains. Michael Morgan is committed to looking at that, what's feasible under regulation. But again, timelines look like they're months away, and 18 hours a day of testing, people are having concerns with sleep and the impacts that that's having on them. And finally, there's green space along the Via Rail intersection, between the Via Rail intersection and the transit way, where a significant amount of green space was removed for staging, for construction staging. And my understanding from what I've seen from the transit way is that green space is now gravel. And I'm very concerned that the area is not going to be remediated to its natural site. I don't want a gravel hill. I don't want gravel field. I'd like to see green space and trees replanted. So again, none of these issues impact the opening of the line, but are outstanding issues in my ward in particular that we need to have some definitive dates. I believe in deadlines and targets. I think they're very important. I think it shows that we hold people accountable when they miss them, and it shows that we are not okay with multi-year delays, that having deadlines gives us something to aim towards. But on these other, what I consider secondary issues, they're important in my ward. Thank you for the very detailed update today.
Okay, I know you're not going to go through it in detail. I think you wanted to register them and they're registered, the concerns. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, we're actively working on all of them. In terms of, I would just say the last one, the green space, the contractor has focused on the landscaping activities at the stations. And so they're just about finished that work. And so then there is a big package of work for them to go back to all the other areas, hand back lands, do additional plantings. They still have, in discussion with them this week, probably 2 to 3 months at least worth of work of landscaping and remediation work. So they are targeting to wrap up this year. They don't want to go into next construction season if they can avoid it. And so that's what their target is.
Okay. Merci. Quartier 15?
Is it Ward 15? Yes, it is. Which number? Yes, it's Ward 15.
Thank you very much, obviously, for a very comprehensive brief. The first question I have is the Corso Italia pedestrian crossing facility. I'm assuming that's one of the deferred works that won't be completed until we're into revenue service. And do you have any timing on that?
That one's on our priority list to have before we open to the public.
Pardon me?
That one is absolutely a priority to have complete and open before we open the Trillium line to the public.
Okay. Okay, that gives me an idea of the timing then. The second question I have, it has taken us a few years, but we're at a good place in terms of addressing disabled trains on the Confederation Line 1 service. How ready are we to deal quickly and effectively with disabled trains on Trillium?
Thank you for the question. So first, this is why we want to be able to run trains a lot so we can deal with those kind of things. And we have as well those simulations that we will, the last 7 days, we will push the system to be able to see, okay, if we have a problem, how can we deal with this problem? How long that will take? And Michael and I, we said a lot that the switches are very important because of the single track. So this is something that we need to be able to quickly resolve those problems so we can continue the service.
So switches and other failures, great dealing with the reliability on those, but trains will become disabled. And it doesn't sound like we have a ton of exercises, real world exercises in removing those trains off the track and getting things flowing again. So that's something we're going to be keeping a close watch on, obviously.
So just on, we do have obviously the 6 Alstom Link trains, very good kind of history with those vehicles, getting them off. The way the engine is structured and mechanically allows you to kind of turn off an engine and still get back, freewheel the other axles, get it back. We have done a towing test with the vehicles. Again, you can, the Stadler vehicles have 4 engines. And so if one of the engines or 2 of the engines or 3 of the engines fails, you can still get back on one engine. So there have been tests. There has been a towing test. But it is a diesel system, no catenary, so that the types of recoveries that we saw on the Confederation line don't exist on the Trillium line because it's a diesel vehicle. And, the team does have some experience with that. So that's not a particular issue that I'm concerned with. To Madam Amilcar's point, more concerned about the switches and the switch performance.
Okay, that's some great nuance. Thank you very much for that. Because it's taken us a long time to get to the point where on line 1 the disabled trains are dealt with, but we are there finally. And then finally on slide 14, with respect to the 8 to 10 week period, there is a qualifier. Ideally, we would have 8 to 10 weeks. Are you going to take advantage of a full 8 to 10 weeks of testing and commissioning?
At this point, it's kind of minimum 8 weeks, ideally 8 to 10 weeks, but we're going to use the full period before we go into service.
So that ideally is intended to indicate that it may be longer, not shorter.
If we run into an issue in week 9, it will be longer.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thanks for a great briefing.
Thank you. Merci. Quartier 14. Quartier 13.
Ward number 13 now. Ward 12, any questions? Ward 11. Ward 10.
Yeah, thank
Ward
you. I do have a
9.
question.
I do have a question.
Can you hear me?
So say this. You're 10?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Great. I just want to thank staff again for the presentation and echo the comments from my colleagues around the timeline and the importance of being able to communicate that, as well as some of the ancillary works around LRT, in particular, the resurfacing of Hunt Club Road under the bridge. But my interest is also in communication and how we communicate this update to the public in practical terms. Will there be any comms products provided to members of council as to how we can best communicate this update for newsletters, etc.?
Yes, we have Amanda here who can detail for you.
Thank you for the question. Yes, we will be providing a kit to councillors so that they can share information with their communities. We will also be providing information on OC Transpo's website. The daily updates that Michael referenced will be provided on our website, as well as some background information that provides a bit of an explainer so that members of the public can understand the information that's being provided. We'll also be providing updates via, as I said, our website, but also on social media. So there will be a breadth of information available for the public and for councillors during the trial running period.
Great, thank you for that. And then I noted that there was an LRT subcommittee meeting at the end of August. Is the intent at that meeting to provide sort of an update as to where we stand in that 8 to 10 week timeline?
Thank you for the question. Indeed, if we are ready. Otherwise, we'll work with the chair to have another date.
Sorry, so just to clarify, if you're, like, I would suspect that regardless of whether you're at the end of the 8 to 10 week, you would know at the end of August where you stand in that 8 to 10 week timeline. So are you suggesting that you might reschedule the meeting so that you're at the end of that 8 to 10 week timeline, or go ahead with the meeting and just tell us you're maybe 6 or 7 weeks into that timeline?
I think either way, we'll have the meeting on August 29th, just to give an update. If we're days away from a more, say, positive announcement, we might ask for it to be rescheduled, but I think you can plan on August 29th to get an update on our progress.
Great, thank you. That's it for me. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you. Ward 9. Ward 8. Ward 7. Ward 6.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
7.
Yeah, hi.
Please.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate this update. And frankly, I don't have a lot of questions. The focus is on stage 2 in Bay Ward. And I'm looking forward to seeing this line going ahead. I know everybody wants a date and we're not going to get it out of you, so we won't go there. But I think it is important that we're doing this very thoroughly, and I appreciate the presentation. It's been a rough ride for stage 2 for residents, and I'm hoping this is going to be a piece of good news when they see that Trillium line working. I think it's going to give some optimism, and I just wanted to let you know that that's what my message is to people as we move forward, is that we've got something happening here, and that's going to help a lot because they're still going through construction detours, etc. And so it's going to be a big help that something happened and it's moving forward. So I just wanted to say that and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Ward 6.
Thank you. Michael, early on, you mentioned there was some innovative work done to achieve some schedule optimizations. Can you explain what that was?
Sure. So in the original thought process or design for the train movements, the train from the airport was going to arrive at South Quay's northbound platform. It was going to move into a pocket track, and it was going to reverse into the southbound platform before heading back to the airport. Operations, through their experience, they've recommended, and we're taking the recommendation that the airport train can move directly into the South Quay's southbound platform. So by moving directly into the South Quay's platform, you avoid 3 or 4 switch movements every 6 minutes for all of time. So that's a huge savings. That's a huge opportunity to improve the reliability, to ensure the reliability of the service. And so it's a great find, I would say, that came from the operations team. And so we're in the process of just formalizing the schedule to include that. But I think it's absolutely a fantastic outcome that they brought forward.
Does that mean a shorter trip then? Or
No, not a shorter trip. It just means that a more reliable trip.
Okay, thank you.
Ward 5. Ward 4. Yeah.
Thank you very much for this briefing. One of the things I noted on the slide was that there was a regulatory approval section. And I'm just wondering if that timing is anything that we need to be thinking about, or has it been contemplated?
So we've been working closely with Transport Canada. There's a whole series of submittals that we've done over the years. The Stadler trains had to be approved. The signal system had to be approved. New safety management system, new security management system. So all of those things have already been done. And we're really where we're getting to is the final step where we need to go back to Transport Canada and say, we're ready. We have all our ducks in a row and request approval for an updated operating certificate. They've been very good. They've said that will come within days of us making that request. And so at this point, we have no concern.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. And then on behalf of Canada North, when is the train coming to Canada? I asked that in jest, but I honestly, one of the things that was repeatedly told to us when, we know that stage 3 depends on 50% federal funding, 50% provincial funding. But it was told to me many times that what it also entails is that the city comes to the federal government to say, we are ready. And obviously, I don't think we would be ready for stage 3 until we're finished stage 2. And now we're getting closer and closer to be saying we finished stage 2. So can we expect as councillors any kind of report, recommendations or updates on when we would start looking at stage 3 or what we might do next? BRT is not LRT. One starts with a B and one starts with an L.
It will be a council decision.
That would be a council decision. Okay, wow, that's very exciting. Okay, thank you very much.
Ward 2.
And Stittsville.
And Ward 1.
Oh,
2 is here?
I'm not Ward 1, but if I could go there, Ward 3.
Oh, I skipped you. Sorry, Councillor Hill. Ward 3.
That's all.
Apologies.
No problem at all. This is really a follow-on from my colleague just prior to me. I just want to confirm the regulatory authority for this test criteria that TNEX will be adjudicating. Is it set by the Transportation Safety Board, or is it set by OC Transpo or a contractor, or where is the actual detailed and prescriptive engineering technical specifications that need to be adhered to? Where are those coming from?
So in terms of trial running and the majority of what I presented today, that's all coming from the contract and the commercial arrangement that we have with the contractor. There is an obligation in parallel concurrently with the contract to meet all the Transport Canada regulations for operating a passenger rail line, as well as certain CTA regulations as well. So there's kind of 2 regulatory authorities. Primary regulatory authority is Transport Canada, and Transport Canada has been involved. They've been to the site, they've seen the trains, they've walked the track. And they will be the ones who are doing the kind of inspections, and we will be providing our annual report back to Transport Canada as the authority.
Okay, thank you very much, and congratulations on reaching this milestone. So thank you, and well done to everybody that was involved.
Okay, thank you. I don't think there was anyone for Ward 2. Ward 1. And then we'll go back to previous wards. So Councillor Leeper is.
Thanks. So where are we? I think I heard you say that we are into the 8 to 10 week testing and commissioning phase. Where? How far into that are we?
I think on the slide I indicated we started on July 8th.
July, okay. Thank you, I missed that.
Okay, anyone else? Councillor Carr?
I have two tiny questions. The first one, when we're going to be running parallel service when we launch, are we going to be pulling buses off of the routes to be able to do that?
Thank you for the question. So actually we have what we call the R2, which is which are buses who are replacing the Trillium line. So if we run the Trillium line without implementing the route review, we have already set extra time so those buses can go to Limebank, because now today we don't have this station, right? So people can either take the R2, those buses, actual buses, or they can take the Trillium line. When we will implement the route review, we will, just to make sure that everything will be okay, we will continue to run buses. Those will be new extra buses, I would say, because with the new ways to bus, we won't need the R2 anymore. However, we want to run parallel service. So customers could, again, either take those buses for a period of time or the Trillium line. At the end, for sure, we'll have only the new ways to bus, which will include the Trillium line for sure.
Okay, so we're not anticipating pulling off local routes or shortening those during, okay. And I have one last question, but it might be a bit too, I don't know, philosophical. I don't know, that's not even the right word, but you know, all over Canada, you know, transit seems to, the take-up seems to be different city by city, right? Like Calgary is like exceeding their volumes. Vancouver is ahead, but they're saying that's because of growth in people. And then I look at a city like Edmonton, which is a government town, just like us. They've just had to hike their fares. They can't get their ridership back to on the LRT. They're higher on buses, which seems to be what we are too, right? Like pre-pandemic, we're going higher on buses than we are in the LRT. Do we have any projections on what we think this line will bring and the impact it will have on ridership? I mean, I know there's tons of factors. The month that we're starting in, return for the federal public servants, university going back in, but has there been any projections done on what this could do to our service?
Pat, can you take that one, please?
Yes, Councillor, there were projections done that were part of the business case for council approval of this project. Those projections, though, were all pre-pandemic. So where we are now is that we know that the new line will improve reliability, improve frequency, and therefore opportunity, give more opportunities to travel, that it will be a more comfortable ride, that it will just be back, for the north part of the line the way it was before the construction project started, and for the new parts of the line, the same kind of service quality. So we know that there will be a good service that can attract people to transit if they are traveling. What we can't know specifically to the areas that this line serves yet is which of those people are traveling and which of those people are working from home and don't need to travel, whether it's by one mode or another. We are certainly optimistic that when people from these areas are traveling, that they will choose transit. And we're also optimistic that the greatly improved quality of that transit will induce more people to make trips. But if they're working from home, they're working from home, and won't be, they won't be there for us to attract if those are just days that they're not going downtown. For Carleton University specifically, though, the biggest point on the line,
This makes a huge improvement. And we expect that once the line is back, people who are attending Carleton will start to make decisions about when to travel and where to live that are consistent with that line being in place.
Okay, thanks very much. Appreciate it. And I'm actually really excited about the airport connection because I don't live very far from the airport and the amount a taxi costs is crazy. My last question is like maybe one I shouldn't even say publicly, but when do the councillors get to go? Do we get to go on the train like before the pilot starts or after? I'm really, I just don't want to be away.
You can call me.
Okay, any other councillors on the line or present? Online? Any councillors? I'll just ask a question if there are no others. Throughout the last 2 years, I mean, we've heard this and our LRT systems are complex projects. That's usually part of your answers in terms of the challenges we're seeing and the progress that we're making. And when you do the presentation, you see essentially a checklist, a Midas checklist of things that need to be satisfied so that we can take over the system and be assured that we're going to have a high level of reliability. Can you just describe that checklist? How many things are on the checklist? And it's not just 7 things. It's probably hundreds of things, if not thousands of things that need to come together to be working all in harmony so that we have a safe and reliable system. So can you just talk about that checklist? I think it looks almost oversimplified when we see it on a screen like that in the presentation. But I imagine, as we've heard again and again, it's complex. And so what does that checklist look like in terms of the number of pieces that need to come together for safety and reliability?
So it's a checklist of checklists. There's probably, 4,000 to 5,000 test procedures that are done in the field, just building up the, the infrastructure, so that's, several thousand, checklists themselves that have multiple items on the list. Then that kind of wraps up. We start doing site acceptance, actually even before site acceptance, post-installation checkout tests. There's, thousands of those. Those wrap up to site acceptance tests. There's, say, hundreds of those. Those culminate in site system integration tests. There's about 185 of those, and that wraps up into is followed by a 3-week trial running period where, again, there's a series of checklists for that period where we're verifying. We're monitoring all of that as part of a rail activation management plan to check that fare gates and telephones and journey, planners and websites and all of those things are all done. It's hundreds, if not thousands of pieces of work that come together at the end to deliver a system. So we try to provide and, communicate in a fashion that's, manageable. And so it simplifies it sometimes, maybe oversimplifies it, understates the amount of effort, but certainly it's been a long journey to get to this point, and the team's very excited that we're at the end. And I think people are going to be very excited when they get on those new trains. The new trains are just fantastic.
Good, thank you for that extra context. Now I'll turn it over to Office of Councillors who may be present or online if they have some questions on behalf of their councillors. Okay, not hearing any, but I'm sure the councillors will follow up as they usually do. So with that, we'll conclude the councillor question and answer period. I want to thank colleagues for their attention today and their participation and their engagement, which I know will continue in the days and weeks and months to come. And still considerable work to be done, but I hope people found this briefing to be of use and helpful in terms of where we're at with the project. So with that, we'll take a 10-minute pause to give staff the opportunity to switch this around for the media Q&A. So thank you again. Merci pour votre participation aujourd'hui.
Thank you so much for your engagement today.
Welcome back, everyone. My name is Kendra Titley, and I will be your moderator today. Je serai votre modératrice aujourd'hui. I will now invite each agency to ask their questions in alphabetical order. You may ask one question with a follow-up. Nous allons maintenant répondre aux questions des médias qui pourront poser une question et une question de suivi. We'll now start with Elise Skura at CBC Ottawa.
Alice Skura, CBC Ottawa.
Thank you very much for the update today and for accepting our questions. So my first question is just about the switches, since I understand that that is fairly significant given that we're going to have single track here. So if you could just give people an understanding, how important is it to get the switches issue right? And kind of what would be the consequences if we were to have switch issues if we opened prematurely?
So on a normal double track network, the trains will run end to end, and they will only really need the switches to switch tracks at the end of the line. And so on a given trip, you're requiring essentially four movements to get the train in place, and sometimes only two, depending on the configuration. So you can have a big system and move a lot of trains and require very few switch movements. On the Trillium line, we have a series of double track. We go to single track, back to double track. So all along the alignment, north to south, we have switches that need to basically perform flawlessly. So for example, there's a switch in the north close to Beach Street, which controls the double track section, essentially Corso Italia and Bayview. If that switch fails, we won't be able to provide service to those two stations. So that particular switch needs to work every time. Now, once you get to Bayview, there's more switches, there's a little bit more flexibility, but in that instance, you would lose service to that segment of the line. Now, we've tried to mitigate that by putting in, there's some technologies that we put in place by monitoring, by kind of making sure that they're working correctly. In the south, we put in as much double track as possible. So if you go Leitrim all the way to Linebank, it's all double track. So we eliminate the issue in that section. But certainly in the north, there's a transition where it's going double track, single track. And at each of those locations, that's a potential failure mode that can cause us to have to bring buses and or at least lose time to fix the switch issue.
Thank you very much for that. I also noted that you had mentioned in the presentation that there was no dispute with the contractor on, I guess, the prerequisites within the contract before you get to trial running. I just wanted to confirm, since with line one, there had been so many issues about the idea of moving the goalposts. Have there been any discussions about disputes on the trial running requirements and on the essential requirements in the contract for how to run the service once it's opened?
So we met with the contractor this morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. We have a check-in every week. And, again, they were very good. They said, we don't want to start trial running before we're ready. And we've had very good discussions with them. Collaboration has been an absolute priority with that organization, Transit Next, over the last several years. So we're in a very good space with them. There's no conflict about what it looks like to open. What does success look like? It's been a very good situation, and I think we're going into it, with a clean slate, with an open mind, trying to for the best outcome for the public.
Awesome. So basically, just to clarify, so everyone's on the same track. Everyone is on board with how everything's going to look as it was in the contract when everything gets set.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll now go to Arthur White-Crummey at CBC Radio.
Hi. So it sounds like you've already been running the trains now for 18 hours a day for some time now. So I just wanted to get a sense to explain to people what actually changes now. How is trial running different from what you've already been doing over the last days and weeks?
So trial running, it should be the same. It should just be more running of 18 hours a day. The difference being that we start measuring the system, we start reporting on the system. But we're practicing now. This is the final step. This is the first time we've really pushed the maintainer to turn the vehicles around in that short window. So they need some time. We're giving them some time to say, get ready. It's not a theoretical thing. It's it's about muscle memory. It's about practicing. It's about optimizing. So that's what we're doing now. We're going to start measuring really seriously starting next week, and then use that to inform when we actually start trial running. So the difference between today and trial running is the measuring, but we are acknowledging that today we're in a learning and growth period where we're giving people an opportunity to really get ready for trial running. Oui. Okay. La seule différence entre comme
The
aujourd'hui.
only difference between the trial and what we're going today is that we're going to be measuring some parameters. Today, every single team is able to practice, the maintenance team, the operational team. So when it's going to be fully working, it's going to work properly.
You also talked about the checklist of checklists that you're dealing with and that it contains thousands of items. I just wanted to get a sense of how far you are through that checklist so far. Like how many have you already checked off and how many are still remain to be done? I get this is going to be a somewhat anecdotal answer.
Well, I mean, we're at the end, right? And so at the end it really wraps up in the system integration tests. I think it's 185, we're down to like 13 that need to be cleaned up. There's another 40 or so that are kind of in that final cycle of cleanup. So we're down to the final list. I was talking to the chair earlier about, if you look at the schedule, there's tens of thousands, there's maybe 15,000 line items in a schedule for one of these projects. And so we're at the end, we're down to, 50 line items, out of that list. And so it's, we're getting to the end of it now.
Thank you. We'll now go to Natalie Van Roy at CTV Ottawa.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. To be clear, there's no chance that the train will open for the start of the school year following Labor Day weekend, correct?
To be clear, we need 8 to 10 weeks to be able to do what we want to do. And then if everything is okay, we will be able to give a date. We'll present to the subcommittee LRT results, and then we'll provide a date.
Okay, and what message do you have for Carleton students, some who chose to live in a certain area to have access to public transportation, and they may be 2 years into their degree now, and they still don't have that access? They're living in a cost of living crisis, and they may not afford a car, parking, and they rely on transit. What message do you have for those thousands of students?
Thank you. I understand their frustration. However, I think the good thing that I can commit today is we want to give them a very good service. We want to be able to say that when the system is opened, it's because we are ready. We don't want to work under pressure. We have learned, as we have said many times. So we want to be able to make sure that everything is okay to be able to open the system. Then they will be proud of that and they will be on time at their school, etc.
Thank you.
On veut s'assurer que le système soit prêt avant qu'on...
We want to be sure that the system is ready before we launch, because otherwise the quality won't be there, unfortunately. And the students might be late at school. So we want to be sure that the system is reliable. And when we're ready, we will launch the system. And I've said it in my introduction too. People need to trust us. And the best way to have their confidence, their trust, is to make sure that they know we'll open the system when it's ready. Le droit? I'll ask my question in French. You don't want to give a precise date for line 2, but do you have a deadline on the other hand? Thank you for the question. No, we don't want to create pressure. Of course, in our mind, we know it would be a lot better for our clients to have the train, but we're committed in ensuring that the service will be reliable, and we'll do everything possible. And we're close to that, but we still have a few things to do. And as long as it's not done, we won't launch the system because we may have problems. We don't want that. You can't say before the end of the year, beginning 2025. We're in the 8 to 10 weeks, as we've said. So it would be this year, but that's only if everything goes well. And then we'll come back to the LRT subcommittee to present our next steps, and we'll propose an opening date to the clients. So, of course, for us, it's clear in our mind that it will be this year. But if there's a new issue that we didn't have on our radar screen, well, we don't know. So that's why we don't want to give a specific date, because we don't want to live with that pressure. We just want to make sure that we do everything that has to be done before.
Merci. We'll go to Blair Crawford at the Ottawa Citizen.
Hello, if I understood correctly, Ricardo Rail is going to be the sort of the independent oversight of the testing process. I know in Justice Horgan's report, he was critical of the role of the third-party observer during the opening of the Confederation line. And I wonder if you can explain how that process has been changed for Trillium Line.
Generally, I think the public inquiry pointed to a lack of an independent oversight of that process, or a lack of a third party sitting at the table who could objectively provide an opinion on whether the results are achieved or not. And so in this instance, we've asked them to do that, to provide that function, so that the teams, the operational teams, the maintenance teams will meet to review the numbers, and that there'll be another person sitting at the table to confirm that, nothing, that they're following the rules of engagement, that they're following the contract. So the objective there is really to provide assurance to everyone that, there's a third party there who's assessing independently of staff that the contract's being met.
Okay, and bouncing a little ahead to when the system does open, do you have a plan in place? Will there be like free service for a week or something similar to what was done during Confederation Line? Can you talk about that?
Thank you for the question. We are working on scenarios, and we'll be able to share with councillors prior to open the service to our customers.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you. On va maintenant à Patrick Foucault, à Radio-Canada.
Patrick Foucault, Radio-Canada. Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to ask a question. With all the issues we have since the beginning of the light rail, if you had a resident in front of you, what would you say to prove that the reliability has been thoroughly tested? What did you do to make sure that the train would run? Thank you. Well, first of all, we learned from our past experience. That's obvious. The people we work with are very competent. They were before, but there were undue pressure on us, and we were kind of in a rush to provide the service. This is not the case today, which doesn't mean that we don't want to open, because there's a cost to all this, but we want to make sure that the system is reliable. And that's why we don't want to give a specific date, because we don't like that pressure. If we give a date, unconsciously, maybe we'll have to turn in circle, and we don't want to do that. We need to be sure that the system is ready. Like Michael said, the system will be rolling now, as it should be offered to the clients after several weeks of testing. And as I said also, we'll have to live with upcoming issues, but at least we will be in a position to settle that. In English, you talked about the transition from buses. Can you explain how this transition will happen with the Trillium Line? Thank you for the question. Well, when we have the green light for the system completion and that we have all certifications, required, we will be ready to open up the service. So first, we will open the train service. And right now, we have a bus service for our users. So we've already planned that on 2 lines, we will add times so that the bus can go to Limebank, for instance, in Bayview. So this way, we will continue to have a parallel bus service to cover the Trillium line. They're not new buses, but because they're already offering the service. And maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, we'll decide to we'll review our network, and we will make sure that we offer a parallel bus service still, just to be sure that the system is still running on a trial basis, and only after we are confident that we can say, okay, we don't need the parallel bus system, we'll just rely on the train.
We'll now go to Elaine McGregor, Centertown Buzz.
Pardon me. I have a question about the new ways to bus and what's happening that will be coming in at the same time as when L2 and L4 are coming apart. And I wanted to know what OC Transpo is doing to improve the reliability of routes going through Centertown, like the 7, the 11, 14, which are constantly bunching up, which are constantly not showing up on time. That was one of the things that was supposed to be fixed in New Ways to Bus, and I'm not seeing anything that's actually being done to do that. And I was wondering what you're actually doing in the next month or so to fix this problem for the change in the bus routes.
Thank you for the question. We have put in place action plans to be able to address situations that impact the reliability of the system. So we know that we have been hiring bus drivers. We are working on the maintenance department, and the New Ways to Bus is one of these items as well that we wanted to put in place to increase the reliability of the system. So when we will implement the New Ways to Bus after running few weeks the Trillium line alone, so this is where we will be able to see how the system will be improved by this New Ways to Bus. But we know as well that we will need to continue to work on hiring more bus drivers, because we will lose some of them on attrition, and we will need to continue to work on our maintenance action plan. So it's multiple things, but what I have said to the Transit Commission is we want to be able to deliver 99.5% of our service per day. So this is where we will say, yes, we have achieved our goal, but I can say today that we were at 96 and now we are at 98.5, 98.6, which is excellent, but we need 99.5.
But we are still getting to the point where, you know, I can look at a bus route downtown and there won't be another number 11 coming for, 35 minutes at rush hour, which is ridiculous. And I'm wondering, have you looked at other options for improving the routes so that buses have more priority in, for example, in intersections where buses simply aren't able to make the intersection and have to wait for 2 or 3 minutes because of not having priority over car traffic in that area?
Thank you. For sure, we wish to have more dedicated lanes. For sure, that would be helpful. But we are doing the maximum to try to face with the traffic. And I said we need more bus drivers. We need reliable buses. We need to put in place this New Ways to Bus. This combination, we will need to deal with the traffic. So we have put more time on our running time. So bus drivers will have more time to run, to stay on the schedule. But this is an ongoing process, and we always open to see what we can do better to improve the service. But it's a challenge to deal with the traffic, definitely.
Thank you. Just a reminder, we're here today to discuss today's presentation. We do have time for a couple more questions. So we'll go back to CBC Ottawa, Arthur White-Crummy.
One thing I found sort of interesting in the trial running process was the 7 days that are going to be used, I think, for failure scenarios. I was hoping that you could take me through some of those. What are some of the examples of potential, situations, catastrophes that you're going to be testing for during that process?
Troy Charter's going to be leading that activity on behalf of his team, so maybe I'll let him have a some quick input.
That's great. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much for the question. Sorry, excuse me. Dealing with a little bit of a throat issue here still. No, with regards to the failure management scenarios, is we want to mimic some of the things that might actually occur from time to time. We talked earlier about, what happens if the switch fails, or what happens if we have a train immobilized. And then we have to activate our R2 for this line. We want to mimic those situations, get our staff to have practice in what to do and how to respond. Who do we need to interact with? Do we need fire services for evacuations? Those types of things. So there's a number of scenarios. We want to practice them. We want to do drills. We want to, that'll help us as well determine how long it'll take to get buses there, how long it'll take to get the service going. But then, we'll also be using the opportunity to mimic situations where there's like a medical on a train. A medical on a train at a station, a medical on a train in between stations. What will we do? How would we respond? Testing out all those various locations. There's access points along the line for emergency responders. They've already gone out and done all those reviews. We've done a few of those significant exercises with them. So those are all examples of types of things that we want to do. And it's just, what can happen. We want to try to practice all those situations as much as we can in advance of going into revenue service. We've done a few scenarios. Obviously, I mean, we've linked up with our emergency services partners. You may recall I believe it was in one of Michael Morgan's updates that we did a significant exercise at the airport where we mimicked an event on the train and we did an evacuation ceremony. So we've done a few of those situations. We've got another situation coming up where we will be doing a mock emergency in the Dow's Lake Tunnel. Mimicking how we responded to that, making sure that our staff are all trained on all those things, but activating the tunnel ventilation system, getting the access, how would we get people out, those types of things. So, and then as I said, it's really just we're trying to anticipate what could happen and how we would respond to it. Medicals on trains, medicals on buses, they happen. Those are things that we can practice and drill in advance.
Thank you. We'll now go to Elise Skura, CBC Radio.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, since we haven't heard from Chair Desroches, obviously this is going to affect your residents a lot, this kind of uncertainty, I guess, with when the launch date is. How challenging is that to explain to people who are so eager to get on the line?
Yeah, thanks for your question. No, we've been waiting decades for this service to come online. And we have a situation where we are the only part of the city that doesn't have a dedicated rapid transit system. So on the one hand, this is an exciting opportunity. It's going to open up a lot of ridership opportunities. Everyone is excited. They see the trains running, and I think that generates a lot of interest. But I know the residents want us to get the system up and running in such manner that it's reliable and that it's safe, and we don't go through the same experience that we did in the first phase of the project. So as you've heard, there's a long list of things that need to come together. I think people understand the complexity of this project. There's certainly frustration, but we need to get it right from day one, and that needs to continue leading up to the winter time to make sure that we're winter ready as well. So again, we've been waiting many years for this project to come together, and it's going to help the people who live here now, and it's going to help the people who are going to eventually move here and be part of the smart growth that we're planning. So I appreciate everyone's patience, and looking forward to seeing some solid progress and making sure that everything comes together so that we can bring some transit relief and transportation relief in the South End. We don't have an extensive We don't have a Queensway in the south of the city, so the road network is very stressed. We have a closure of Bank Street that is happening right now to bring some upgrades there. So it can't happen soon enough, but we have to get it right from day one, and I think we're on the road to doing that.
Thank you.
Oui, oui, non, ça fait plus que 10 ans qu'on attend
No,
pour ce système.
we've been waiting for this for more than 10 years. We're the only part of the city that has no reserve transit. I mean, all the buses are on the roads now, and there's a lot of late people being late. We need a system, but a system that needs to be reliable from day one, from the launch. So as I said, residents are frustrated, I know, but they understand that the system is quite complex and that we don't want to have the same problems we had the first time.
Thank you.
You talked about the liability standard. You want to reach 88%, and that's quite high. But what happens if you don't reach your 98.5%? Well, we'll start again. And we'll find the problems, the issues that are preventing us from reaching that level of on-time service. And that has to do with reliability also. So we'll continue until we get it.
Merci. We'll go to Natalie Van Roy at CTV Ottawa.
Thank you. I have two follow-up questions. The first one is, when specifically will there be a timeline for an opening date for this line?
So we, one of the councillors asked, we'll be back on August 29th to give an update on progress, and we'll be in a much better space at that point to understand, kind of to give you maybe a more informed answer to that question.
Okay, and follow-up question is, how are you establishing trust with the community following 2 years of delays and no timeline, no deadline for when this line will reopen or open?
I think we have been very, very transparent. We have shared a lot of info. We haven't hide anything. So I think trust has been reestablished. And the fact as well that we don't want to rush this to open the system. And the reliability of the service will be, I hope, will be the reset with that trust. I hope. Je pense qu'on a partagé beaucoup d'informations. On a été
I think we shared a lot of information. We were very transparent with the LRT subcommittee or the Transit Commission, with the public. We hide nothing, but we don't want to put pressure on us for this reason. I think the confidence is reestablished, but it's the reliability that will confirm it.
Thank you. Our last question will be with Patrick Foucault with Radio-Canada.
The question was asked in English and was responded over there, but I don't know if it's possible to nous donner en français.
To repeat in French, the explanation of what is to be tested in this 7-day period, when you're talking about a catastrophic event. And can you repeat that in French? Well, we'll test as many scenarios as possible. For instance, 2 trains are stopped, and unfortunately, we know that there's only one line. Today, with the Confederation line, if there's an issue, you can go on platform only. We don't have the same possibility everywhere. We want to test that. And Michael said, if we have a reliability problem, we can maybe take a train and push the train, or we can tow the train. But we want to be sure that we can react quickly, because it's one thing to do something, everything's possible, but it's something else to do it in record time so that we can restart the system, the service. So the service is offered on a single line, and that adds complexity to the system. And also, what happens if someone is sick on the train, or if you're on the platform? I mean, how do we react? What do we do to set up the R2 service? Which line will have to be sacrificed to make sure that we can offer the parallel service? So all these scenarios are things that we know how to react, but we want to practice so that we can execute in record time. And then we'll have a debrief to see what we could have done different or better. How could we communicate with the train operator, the control room? All these things are important because we're aware that despite all the efforts that we've spent so far, we know that there will be issues, and we try to plan for them.
Merci, thank you. This concludes today's media availability. Ceci conclut le point de presse d'aujourd'hui.